Alright, so there's a few people that wanted to know what was wrong with this transmission. Apparently they missed it in one of the episodes. I'm going to explain a little bit as to what happens with these transmissions when they're abused. And you can abuse these transmissions. I'm not saying that I abused them. I'm not saying that Timothy abused it, but I'm saying that this transmission was actually abused before I got it. This tractor was actually a shit tank tractor. They used it to haul those great big manure tanks that are like, I don't know, that haul 30,000 pounds of manure, or 15 tons or more. And when you go down a road, these tractors aren't known to go very fast. They're like a 20-mile-an-hour machine. When you throw the thing into from full speed to slow it down with the transmission, you start to cause problems. Now, I never had this tractor apart where I had the rear axles off. And when I bought the machine, I noticed that they had used this orange sealant in there. So this tractor has been apart before I got it, and I bought it in 2003. And when I bought it on the dock. I bought it while it was in Germany, and then I had the option to. I bought it from a company that was importing tractors from Germany. I didn't actually go to Germany to buy this tractor, and that's why when I went to England, I pretty much made up my mind that the next time I buy a piece of equipment overseas, I'm actually going to put my eyes on it before I say yes. Before I actually have it shipped in, because when you're on the dock, they only give you a certain amount of time to look over the piece of equipment, because at least at that time, today you can't even get on the dock to look at the piece of equipment. It just doesn't happen. So, but back in 2003, before we had all these, rules and regulations that we're so burdened with by our government, and, for safety regulations is what they claim. I personally think that it's no big deal to be allowed onto the dock. But anyway, so I look at the tractor looks good on the dock. But I didn't notice all these weird things until I get it home. Like there's orange goop squirting out the sides of these axles here. There's orange goop. This entire tractor had been torn apart. If you look, it's even there right in there where the PTO is. So that could be taken one of two ways. It could be taken in a good way, like, oh, they rebuilt the tractor before I got it, which I believe they did rebuild the brakes on this tractor. I've never had it. You ever have any problems with the brakes?
No.
But I never had any problems with the brakes. But this thing went so far as to even the front axle. You can see it there. So the tires on this tractor, of course these aren't the original tires, obviously I've changed them a couple of times, but they were Michelin's, and they had all these cuts and micro cuts and stuff in them, like it was pulling a scraper pan, and they were Michelin tires. That, it can come from pulling a lot. Flat again. That darn tire's flat again. I should watch my language. I got reprimanded this morning by someone's mother. But anyway,
What?
I used the F word a little too much. I need to tame that down a little bit. But anyway, I never had any problems with the front end under it, and I've never had any problems with the brakes or anything under it. I did have problems with this unit here, because this is the handbrake unit right there. It's a little different than the United States model. I can replace that with an actual US model and do away with the handbrake piece here, which, I don't care one way or the other. It doesn't matter to me whether that thing's there or not. But there's a brake system in there that I removed because it wasn't functioning properly. Yeah, so those were the things that I noticed about this tractor when I got it. Now, right after I got it in the spring of 2003. By winter of fall of 2003, it developed a funky noise. in the transmission. And I don't know if I explained this or not at any point, but there was and let me pull my cardboard back. I got a little bit of surface rust from condensation. But this input right here, the input gear right there, was that bolt end there. The bearing had gone bad in there. So this is the second time I've had this tractor this far apart. Apparently I used the light colored blue goop when I put it together. I'm not going to do that again. I've learned a little bit since then. But anyways, I replaced the bearings in there, and that right there, that nut, I actually put a little bit of Loctite on it, blue Loctite, to hold it in place, because I think that when whoever had this thing apart the last time, they actually didn't tighten it enough to, they didn't set the torque right, and that caused a little bit of an issue. So, yeah, and but anyways, a little blue Loctite on there. I can remove it if I have to. I don't have to. Let me get in here on the other side while I'm yammering on about this thing. It's not really difficult to take out, but you pull that bolt and you can see right there at the end there is where that bolt goes all the way through, and it holds this plate on, which, in turn holds the bearings to the right position. Or the right tension or torque. Now there's a bunch of dirt down in here, so what I'm going to do before I put this transmission back together is I'm actually going to pull the plug out of the bottom again, and I'm going to flush that with diesel fuel to get all that crap out of there, because you don't want to put a tractor back together with dirt that has fallen in there. So I'm going to clean all this stuff off of here. The gasket material, that all comes off, and any of that dirt that's in there. There's a screen. I can show you the screen. I have to pull a tube off in order to get to that screen, if I remember correctly. But the screen is right there, and in that screen I can see that the suction screen for the hydraulic oil, there's a bunch of shit down in there. And what I will do is I'm going to put a cowl magnet down in the bottom of this transmission case. For those of you that don't know what a cow magnet is, a cow magnet is a magnet that you put down a cow's throat for when they have hardware. Cows get into the craziest things, and combines drop metal, and fences get sucked up into combines, little pieces of wire and things. And if they make it over the magnet on the grinder or the feed mill, magnet doesn't pick up the metal. The cow in turn eats it, and what you do is you drop a magnet into the cow's throat, and that collects the hardware or the metal, which is poking a hole through its stomach and into its heart usually, and killing it. But they work really, really well inside transmissions to collect any of the dirt or metal shavings that just so happen in the tractor. And they can go through that suction screen, and they can, make it through certain places, and it's just better to collect it before it ever gets near the pump, because pumps, let's face it, they're $1,500-$1,600 or more for the pump. If you buy it from John Deere, it's going to cost you a couple, $3,000 for this particular tractor, which obviously is quite expensive. But yeah, so those are the things that I'm going to be doing here before I put that brand new transmission into this housing. I could not wash this tractor because it was unwashable. It wouldn't move. I pulled it off a trailer with one tractor, and I drove it up in here, and this is all the farther it got, because that's just the way it is. Yeah. So I got a lot of work ahead of me, and a lot of work ahead of me. It has to get done before I can actually go ahead and put this tractor back together. And another thing before I put the tractor back together is I'm gonna look at that ring gear in the transmission to make sure that the ring and pinion gears are okay, and I don't have a mess like I had with the 4450 a few years back. That was 2013 that I had that problem. I had a tooth that was missing, but I don't see any issues with this one. I think it's just fine, no chipping or anything. So, yeah, I said it was on the 4450. So in order to do that, if I have to tear it out, and I know this tractor's had it out before because look at this. This is all marks from this machine being torn apart. So whoever did what to this tractor before I bought it, it was a major overhaul before I bought this tractor. And I'm okay. It's all good now because I just don't care. It's all going to go back together and it's going to function for many years after I get it back together. Right, Tim? I have pretty much made up my mind that once I get this transmission in here, I'm going to load it on the trailer and I'm going to take it out to deer country and I'm going to have them do the pressure checks on the transmission valve, the shifting valve, if it doesn't shift properly, which it probably will shift okay. But it just be for good measure. You don't want to put all that money into a tractor and then the transmission doesn't shift properly and it wipes the clutch plates out. But anyways, back to this transmission before I shut this camera off. This is what was wrong with it. See these pieces here? Come on. Those pieces are clutch disc. Here's a clutch disc. I don't know what Tim did with the rest of it. But there's, what was there, 6 of these things and 3 of those. They broke. They broke out. And what happens when that breaks out, it strips the teeth off of the clutch disc, forcing these pieces into the planetary. It was just really, really bad. I could have replaced just those discs and those there, but then I have this planetary in there, or planetaries, that have had some large pieces of metal get chewed up through the transmission. It just didn't make sense to me to do all that work to this thing and then put it all back together again and then sweat it out whether it was going to hold together or not. Like I said in the earlier video, that this unit here remanufactured is it's a $9,000 or $9,100 deal. I paid, as you saw in the video, that it was like $9,300 for a brand new one, and I promptly got some guys saying, well, I don't know how it works in the U.S., but we replace bearings. There's no bearings in this transmission. None. There's absolutely not one bearing in that transmission. They're all bushings. There are bushings in there. So maybe they would remanufacture the bushings. Maybe they would replace the clutch packs or the clutch plates that were worn. But for the most part, remanufactured in the United States. I don't know how it is in Europe, but in the United States, they don't replace all the pieces and just use the housing. They only replace the pieces that are worn out of spec, and that's all they do. They replace those pieces. If it's not worn out of spec, guess what, pal? It's going back in there. And they'll take 2 or 3 of these transmissions apart and then spec all the pieces, and then they'll put them back together again. As far as the bushings that the shafts run on, they may replace those. I'm not sure. I've never been to the remanufacturing facility, but if it's within spec, I can almost guarantee you that that's going back in there, or they won't even replace them because it's not worn past the point of usability. Maybe in Europe, it's different. I don't know. But in the United States, I know that's what they do. So these transmissions, if you do have a power shift, that's the same power shift pack that's in a 4055, I think, or even a 4050. It's the same power shift pack. It's a 15-speed. Anything with a 15-speed power shift, whether it's a 125 horsepower power shift or a 200 horsepower power shift, it's the same shift pack. Makes no difference. They're all the same. So if you're running a smaller, lesser horsepower tractor, that transmission would probably last 25,000 hours. This one just so happened to make it somewhere around 7,500 hours. So that's it. But that's what really let loose on that transmission, was right there. And anybody that wants this thing, I mean, I'll sell it cheap. You know, it's basically a chunk of scrap to me right now. I was thinking of calling, I think, Abilene Machine and maybe offering it to them, see if they would buy it, because they'd remanufacture that thing. And that's that. So anyways, thanks for watching.